Okay, we're live. Here we go. I'll play some great music by a band called Cloud People. Hopefully it doesn't get me taken down. Turn that down a little bit. Okay, so welcome back. Today, I am going to be going over the next installment of my 5 Ways Lucid Dreaming Fundamentals series. We started with awareness. We went on to intention. After that, we did willpower. Today, we're doing expectation. If you want to watch an overview, I have a playlist on my channel for all the videos. And once I'm done with all of the separate 5 ways, I will be creating a video on how to adjust or create your own practice, lucid dreaming practice, based on the 5 ways. And that will also come along with a Google Doc that I will be creating. Well, I've already created most of it, but I will be providing to the public so that you can use it for yourself. All right, so previously we talked about awareness, which is probably the most broad, largest of the subjects. Then we got into intention, which without intention, you're out of luck, up a stream, etc. Talked about willpower, which is the powerhouse of the cell. Now we're getting into expectation. And as usual, I have a short description. And it says, this is an accumulation of our experience that produces predictability and habit. I have a little bit larger description that I'm going to say here, which is which you will be provided on the Google Doc. This is an analogy. There are foundational structures in our minds that create boundaries of experience. These serve to protect us in survival situations by giving us warning signs of danger. They also make movement through life choices more efficient and reduce the anxiety produced by those decisions. What I describe, I will call expectation. This is an accumulation of our experience that produces predictability and habit. We put one foot in front of the other because we expect our foot to touch the ground. That is a simplified example of expectation. A more complex example might be the Pavlovian response. Basically, this is a tool of the mind to prepare for future events. So, you could look at expectation as a function of memory. However, what I am looking at is the structures that are created through experience and memory. So you kind of have this feedback loop with expectation where you can actually change your expectations consciously, but for the most part, we act upon the world based on our expectation of the world. We expect the stove to be hot. Why? Because at some point in our lives, maybe we touched the stove and it burned us. Here we have a guy sitting waiting for a train. Why is somebody sitting on a bench, on a slab of concrete, waiting for some vehicle that travels on rails? Because this person probably bought a ticket. They probably looked at the schedule. They have a reasonable expectation that a train will arrive at a particular time, and they will be able to get on without the train turning into jello or them falling through the floor into the void, right? So there's very simple expectations, but it can get extremely complex. It's basically, probably mostly complex because I'm making it complex. We don't often think about the complexity, and we don't really need to. Our minds take care of all the complex bits, and we just live our lives. It's usually only when things go wrong that we start to reevaluate our expectations about life. So, oh wow, I expected life to be easier than this, or I expected to have this by this time of my life, or whatever it may be. Then you say, oh, I have to reevaluate. And unexpected happenings can actually sort of make it to where the process of your expectations are gummed up, disabled, to the point where you're unable to form adaptive expectation schemas. So, for every one of these 5 ways, I have subtypes. And in the first video, awareness, there were several subtypes. In this one, there's only a couple. A lot of the 5 ways, they only have a couple subtypes. Awareness is just a massive topic. So with expectation, my subtypes are schema and faith in self. So the next 5, the fifth way is confidence. So I'm going to draw some contrasts between faith and confidence. There is a quote by Carrie Fisher, probably the best quote on confidence versus faith that I know of. She says, "Stay afraid, but do it anyway. What's important is the action. You don't have to wait to be confident. Just do it, and eventually the confidence will follow." And that's this is like probably the most basic description of how to construct adaptive schemas and build up this expectation. Now, why don't I just say schema for this? Because a schema is a structure. That's really what it is. And it's an established structure. However, expectation can also include something that has not yet been established. You can create a new expectation. And how would you, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because expectation schema is based off of previous experiences. How would you expect something that hasn't happened before? Well, that is what we would call faith. And that's what I'm calling faith in self. In that we can produce expectations of our behavior that we have not done before. And expecting to change no matter what you've been through, what you've done, who you are, expecting that it's possible and that it's going to happen, that's how I see faith. That's how I'm using it in this context. Okay. So how does this apply to lucid dreams? So I'm going to break it into 2 parts here. One part is kind of on a larger scale, expectation for success when you are performing techniques and exercises. And the other aspect is going to be expectation within a lucid dream. And this is directly related to dream control. So, a lot of people have made fundamentals lists out there. Mine is more of a higher level conceptual framework, not necessarily specifics like dream control or particular techniques or exercises or skills like perspective memory. Um, Perspective memory falls under my awareness concept, but this is why I built the 5 ways in this structure, in this framework, in this way, is I don't want to narrow it too much, and I wanted to, well, it's not that I wanted to construct it a certain way. It just kind of came to me as is, and then I had to figure out a way to make it work, essentially. And so the concepts are quite broad, and you could probably fit pretty much any aspect of lucid dreaming within any of these 5 ways. And that's one of the reasons why I say in every video, you could build a lucid dreaming practice off any one of these, any one of the 5 ways. However, ideally, you would be using all of them, right? And by the way, I've got this slideshow going on. It's just to, give you something visual to look at while I'm talking, and trying to, this is Chat GPT's representation of expectation in visual form. So, the image on the screen is actually quite useful because getting gifts, holidays, there's a lot of expectation built into that. If you think about it, a newborn baby doesn't know what Christmas is. But by the time a child is 5, 6 years old, they know exactly what it is and they know what to expect. And so there's a lot of behaviors that are tied to that expectation. Okay. So now what we're going to do is reverse engineer this. So the outcome in that scenario is Christmas, getting gifts, spending time with the family, the smell of the Christmas tree, the lights, the snow outside, if you're lucky, and so on. So let's pretend that result, the train arriving, whatever it may be, whatever you're waiting for, the rain to water your crops, which I believe is in one of these images. What are we expecting? We're going to expect to get lucid in a dream. All right, so let's reverse engineer that. Okay, so the result, a lot of times our expectations are built on results that are outside of our control. And this is why expectation is so tough to work with lucid dreaming, because it's all happening in our head. And so it's within our control, and there's not a lot we can do to force it or make it happen from the outside. Literally, like external initiated lucid dreams are the most difficult to induce. Cognitive techniques have been the most successful thus far with mnemonic-induced lucid dreaming. Things like the senses-initiated lucid dream, that sort of thing has proven to be the most effective so far. Foley's combined technique, and so on. So what we need to do here is start thinking about the ways that we can create a result in our mind without having it or without knowing what it's like. So if you've already had a lucid, this is going to be easier because you know what to expect. You know what you're going to experience. At least you got a really good idea. If you haven't had a lucid dream, it's going to be more tricky to be able to produce this expectation. kind of have to, and a lot of people come to this with like, oh, I want to do this particular thing, which usually involves dream control. So we're going to get to that. And this, oh, I want to fly, or I want to be in this particular show or TV show or movie. I want to do this particular thing in the dream. However, that will only get you excited about it. It's not necessarily going to form the proper expectation, because you don't know what to expect. And so, there are ways to trigger a lucid dream outside of cognitive techniques. I'm mostly going to be talking about cognitive techniques here. For example, you could do a cycle adjustment technique. You could do an extended wake back to bed with an attempt there. Those are good ways to manipulate your physiology in order to trigger a lucid dream. However, most of the time, people will use cognitive techniques like memory, intention, and generally speaking, mild is based on memory and intention. And so one of the best things that you can have to build your expectation is dream memories. So working on your recall to know what a dream is like, know what your dreams are like. Okay. So if you're just starting out, it's going to take some time to recall enough dreams to actually know what your dreams are like. Gathering dream signs, for example, identifying patterns in your dreams. That's going to be huge. So getting back to the result. The result is I just got a lucid dream. If you don't know what it's like, you're going to have to recall some dreams just to get a rough idea of what a dream is like. And then you're going to need to place yourself within the dream, in your mind, in your imagination. Place yourself within the dream and being aware that it is a dream, knowing that it is a dream. Now we're talking, again, techniques, especially like mild, involves all 5 of the 5 ways. Okay. But in this case, we're just going to focus on expectation. And if you've ever believed something is going to happen, I think the best example here is something that has equal chance of happening or not happening, or maybe like a 75% chance of happening. Like, it's probably more likely to happen. So you kind of think of something like that where there's enough room for doubt, but you're also pretty sure it's going to happen. So that situation is going to give you the best idea of what the contrast between a positive expectation and a negative expectation is. Whether you are sports, politics, like if you're making some food and you're expecting it to taste a certain way, but you're not sure if it's going to turn out right. There's a myriad of experiences that we have where we're pretty sure it's going to happen the way we want it to happen, but we're not totally sure. So really familiarize yourself with that contrast and know what it feels like. Then I want you to dig into the positive side. Dig in that positive side of the expectation. All right, so it's based on some things that you know about, but I want you to isolate that perception, of expecting it expecting a positive outcome. Okay. So, and this kind of hits on something that is true across a lot of lucid dreaming techniques and exercises, is isolating a very specific aspect of our mental powers, of our mind. Being able to exercise it, being able to use it in a particular situation towards a certain end. That's extremely important for lucid dreaming, because what we're doing, these are all mental tools, exercises, and you can influence them, of course, through physical means as well. But a lot of this is strictly mental exercises. So what we want to do is focus on this positive expectation and be able to produce that at will. Now, this is tricky. If you haven't had something happen to you before, if it hasn't worked out before, it is extremely difficult to expect it to work out. You know, now some people delude themselves into optimism, but what I'm talking about is realistic. Okay, I know the odds here, like my odds are probably 5% per attempt if I'm a beginner for mild. So it's probably going to take me like 90 days to, figure this out, become consistent. But if you're able to know that, right? Okay, those are my like strictly odds. Those are the numbers. But if I'm able to establish a positive mindset, positive expectation, I am going to increase my chances. The trick is to be able to maintain these positive expectations through failure. Okay. And that's the real trick, is that if you're able to maintain a positive expectation about what you're doing despite failing, you are going to, in the long run, be extremely successful. Okay. So let's tie this all together. We've looked at things in your past memories in your life where, things will probably work out, but there's a chance they won't. You've thought about, okay, there's a positive expectation there, but there's also a negative. All right, what is that like? How does it feel? Where am I at mentally? Can I produce that positive expectation on its own in regards to lucid dreaming? Okay. Then we're going to inject some fortitude. No matter what, even if I fail, I'm still going to maintain this positive mindset. Not because there's a causal relationship of +1 mindset, +1 lucid dream. No, it's because I know that in the long run, a positive expectation is going to give me more success than a negative expectation. Some of us have difficulty with negative expectations, especially if we fail at something. Then it's discouraging and it may produce a lot of negative expectation. So then we have to work on it. One of the most effective ways I think I've worked with negative expectations is simply to focus on the exercises themselves. Instead of thinking too much about the final outcome, right? So if it's Christmas Eve and it's almost time for Christmas, rather than focusing on Christmas time, I'm going to focus on going to sleep. Because if I stay up all night, it's going to take forever to get there, and then I'm going to be tired when I wake up. So I need to focus on right now to let the process play out. So in the end, it's going to work out the way I want it to. And that's the big thing about negative expectation, is it's going to undermine the process. It's not going to allow things to grow and develop naturally. And that's going to slow things down, it's going to make you fail, and then you're going to be demoralized and you're going to want to quit. So that's why I think it's so important to maintain a positive mindset, to not be bothered by failures, and to focus on what you're doing rather than the final outcome. I'm going to focus on what I'm doing right now versus the final outcome. Okay. All right, so that's kind of like, in a nutshell, right? That's, a 25-minute nutshell. That's basically expectation for lucid dreaming and how I think it should be used. Now let's kind of get into a little bit of schema, faith, and then we'll get into using expectation in a lucid dream. All right, so schema, I'll give you an example here. So in the last couple of years, I started having a lot of lucid dreams where I had a gun and somebody was after me and I had to shoot them and kill them. When it first started happening, my gun wouldn't work. I try to pull the trigger and I'd be like pulling as hard as I can, but the trigger wouldn't do what it needs to do. Or I'd pull the trigger and the bullet would just fall out of the barrel and not go anywhere. Or I would pull the trigger and it would fire and the bullet would go wild. So over time, and this wasn't necessarily planned, but over time, each time the gun came up in my lucid dreams, I was, okay, here's the gun again. All right, let's focus on this particular aspect. Let's really make sure the bullet gets to the destination. So, and a lot of this stuff is just going to be, it's going to need to be intuitive, right? It's going to need to be like, play with it. You're going to need to figure out what works for you. So I'd be pointing the gun at the person, then I'd point with my other hand to concentrate on where the bullet needs to go. Or I'd hold the gun and I would just concentrate on pulling the trigger. And slowly but surely over time, the gun started to work. And essentially what I was doing was building a schema for shooting a gun. And one of the most effective things to build a schema is to bring aspects of waking life into the lucid dream. This can be difficult because it requires remembering your waking life, which doesn't happen often. So there is an aspect there of difficulty that goes along with that. If you can't remember anything from waking life, just try to think about how it would work. Okay, how this is a gun. How would it work? It needs, when I pull the trigger, it needs to click. When I pull the trigger and it clicks, and then a bullet needs to come out. So step by step, kind of slowly but surely building that schema. There's also more abstract schemas, like expecting dream characters to attack you, expecting your worst fears to come true in a lucid. So these are more abstract schemas that are going to either harm or help. I personally prefer the terms adaptive and maladaptive schemas. An adaptive schema is something that's going to help you improve. It's going to help you reach your goals. So, one of the, if you want to look at the gun example, there's a meta, or well, maybe not meta schema, but there's another schema on top of that that's, I believe that I can change the way my dreams work. I have an expectation that I can change the way my dreams work. And that is also something that you're going to need to work on and maintain. That kind of ties into confidence. That's a thing as well. To make sure, confidence is something that you don't necessarily need for expectation, but it sure helps. Like going back to that Carrie Fisher quote, she says, "Stay afraid, but do it anyway. What's important is the action. You don't have to wait to be confident. Just do it, and eventually the confidence will follow." So this is what I'm talking about. One of the best things to do to build positive expectation and fight negative expectation is just focus on what's in front of you. Focus on the exercise. Focus on what you're doing. Don't focus so much on the ultimate goal of being an amazing lucid dreamer. Okay. Focus on getting good at dream recall. Focus on getting good at reality testing, perspective memory, pre-sleep exercises, wake back to bed. Whatever it may be, focus on getting good at that. Not only are you building skills, but you're also building positive reinforcement through improvements. So you're improving on this particular skill that you're working on. That's going to give you more confidence. That's going to give you more positive expectation that what I'm doing is working. I knew somebody recently that they started working with a dream coach. The dream coach started having them work on perspective memory. It worked for them. They did this alarm exercise where you set an alarm and then you try to turn it off right before it goes off without looking at it the whole time. You remember automatically. And when it started working for them, they got this massive boost in confidence, and they started expecting it to work. Then they started expecting it to work for dreams, and then it improved their dream control and just had this massive halo effect of improving their confidence across the board. Great expectations, schema building. It was great. So that's when you're talking about long-term growth and improvements, a lot of people get stuck for weeks or months, sometimes years, and it's probably there's a good chance that you're focusing too much on the final goal and not enough on the individual building blocks that get you there. And so if you think about, you're trying to jump over a canyon, well, you need to build a bridge if you can't jump across. But a lot of people just keep on trying to jump across, and they, maybe they get better at jumping. They can make it a little farther each time. But, maybe eventually they'll get strong enough to do it, right? But it would be much better to work on the little things, because those are going to add up in the long run. Okay, so schema, you could say everything is schema, because schema is just a word for a structure, a layout, a pattern. And dream signs are schemas. But what's helpful about this word is that it gives you a conceptual framework to identify patterns, whether it's the dream content, whether it's your mindset, whether it's the results or your reaction to your results, whatever it might be, helps you identify what a schema is and then work with it. And then build positive, adaptive schemas. You can work with any negative schema or maladaptive schema. You can counter it. For example, I almost drowned when I was a kid. I have fear of water in my dreams. So what I did is basically exposure therapy. I would find water in lucid dreams and put myself in the water. Despite being terrified, I knew it was a dream, and so I could do that. Until eventually, I was going to the water without fear. Well, I shouldn't say without fear. I was going to the water. I was afraid, but I was able to get a lot out of that until eventually, I swam underwater, and it was great. I was swimming with the dolphins and the whales. It was great. Sometimes it's a matter of just pushing through the fear, through the pain. Getting bitten by spiders and hornets is part of my journey. Okay. Pushing through that pain is necessary. It can be very difficult, waking up emotionally distraught. It's affecting you for days or weeks. But there's a change happening there. There's an improvement, and you got to be patient with yourself. You got to give yourself time. Focus on the little things, one thing at a time. Maybe you can't deal with it in the dreams. Maybe you have to work with it in waking life. Okay, then it's a matter of incubation. It's a matter of creating scenarios that you can believe in during your waking life. Construct those schemas in your waking life, believe in them, and work with them slowly but surely. Don't expect major change in a short amount of time. That's going to demoralize you. It's going to undermine your efforts. Believe in little things. All right? The Gandalf line about let's see if I can find it in less than 10 seconds. Saruman believes that it is only great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found. I have found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay. So that's a perfect encapsulation of how you deal with negative maladaptive schema. It's the little things. Just do the little things. And over time, and release this expectation of immediate gratification, release the expectation of immediate success, that you're going to be the best ever. Even if it does happen that way, you're not going to get there by just flipping a switch. You're going to get there through hard work and consistency. Okay. So here I have schema and action as incubation. I've mentioned incubation here, and I went through it a little bit. It's going to be huge in order to produce adaptive schema. So, learn what dream incubation is, learn how to visualize. Visualization doesn't have to be only visual things. Think of it more as imagination. It can be anything. Literally anything. Feelings, emotions, sounds, taste, touch, everything. All right. And sometimes it can take weeks or months in order for something that you're incubating to come to life in your dreams. And it's just a matter of time. Something you have to remember about this, your mind is a ship, and it takes a lot to think of it as a massive cargo ship, and it takes a ton of power to move. It takes a long time to get going, to turn, and so on. That's why they use tugboats in the marine, the bays and whatever, because they're so big. But so I'm not going to get into a lot of the details and specifics of these. Once I have a guide written out, you can look at more of the specifics there. But I'm going to move on now to faith and self. So I've been talking about this pretty much the whole time, but I want to get into more specifics of it. When we think faith, most people think about religion. But the thing about faith and religion is really what it's doing is it's providing the person a foundation of expectation that in the end I did what I could and life goes on. Okay? I'm not in control. Something else is in control. And that is going to be in control no matter what I do. And so all I can do is do my best and control the things I can control, and don't worry about the things I can't control. Faith is also adopting an identity and believing that that identity is going to see you through anything. So for Christians, they're adopting the identity of Jesus. It's going to get them through anything, no matter what happens to them. So if you think about that without the religious aspect, having faith in the process, having faith that as long as you stay there, as long as you show up, as long as you're consistent, eventually things are going to happen. Things are going to be positive. Things are going to turn out. May not be the way you wanted it to turn out, but if you're consistent, you're going to get results. I have this subtype in action as self-affirmation and auto-suggestion. So there is a lot of this involved in the faith aspect. You have a particular concept or message that's distilled down into a line, words, feeling. I am going to lucid dream tonight. I am going to realize I am dreaming. I am dreaming. These sort of things, they're just words, but they bring to mind schemas, activate schemas, right? So you can use these self-affirmations or auto-suggestions to create schemas. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. It might take, depending on what you're dealing with and depending on how strong you want the schema to be, is going to determine how long it's going to take and how much energy it's going to take to construct it and keep it consistently effective. There's a lot of variations on here. There's a ton of different ways you could approach this. You can use cognitive techniques, physical, external, internal, whatever. Auto-suggestion, it can be produced in so many different ways. And I encourage you to research these things on their own and see how it fits together based on my explanation here. Okay. So finally, I want to get into using expectation within the dream. How do we use expectation within lucid dreams? Okay. There's a whole spectrum here, I think, from maximum effort to extreme passive effort. So maximum effort to me is, I'm trying to do this thing right, and it's right here, and and it just needs to happen. So I like the Elder Scrolls games, and something in there they have portals to other dimensions. So in one dream, I'm just pointing in the air, creating the portal, and it's just forming at the tip of my finger, right? And I'm just tracing the line. That to me is like I'm putting everything into it, focusing, high focus, right in front of me. On the other hand, just the other night I had a lucid where I was at the top of a building. I was in this massive room, and I just wanted to experience something beautiful. And so, I had this just really, really like subtle, passive expectation that I was going to experience something beautiful. And all of these white orbs appeared. And around the white orbs was orbiting these colored orbs. And it was amazing. But I didn't focus on that really at all. It was just like this tiny little thought. And I just planted it in the dream. And I didn't expect anything specific. All I did was like, you can give me this, and we'll see what happens. There wasn't really a strong expectation of success or failure. I just wanted to see what would happen. So, on the one extreme, you have a very specific goal, specific thing in mind that you want to happen. On the very other end of the spectrum, it's this really passive, um, low signal kind of thing that you don't have a specific outcome in mind. You're just wanting this particular thing. You let the dream do whatever. In the middle, you have something that you would like to do or something that you would like to happen, and you're passively pushing the dream in that direction. Okay. So if I'm floating in space and I want to, go to a solar system, and I just kind of think about solar systems and stars and having that experience, and then, a galaxy pops up. So in that respect, expectation can be really useful for dream control. Another kind of more high energy direct expectation would be going around a corner and expecting to see a particular thing. You can even visualize it while you're in the lucid dream and then go around the corner to see it, to find it. Open a door expecting to see a particular thing. Looking at a screen expecting a particular thing. Looking at a mirror expecting a particular thing. And with these things, what's great about these things is you can try multiple times in a single dream. If it doesn't work, close the door and open it again. Go back around the corner. Look away from the screen and then look back. Look away from the mirror and then look back. And you can kind of build your energy, visualize what you want to happen, and kind of construct that expectation within the dream. And to me, that's one of the most effective ways to use expectation, is through dream control. And you can even use that within your lucid dreams to influence your larger schemas. And so, if you're having a hard time with dream control, you can go into the dream and just start producing that positive expectation just all by itself, like we were talking about before, where it's just purely positive expectation and that's it. You could have a breakthrough just doing that. You could talk to a dream character and talk to them about positive expectation and see what they think. See what your mind has to say. So there's a myriad of possibilities there within the lucid dream as well. I think, to kind of wrap this up, I try to keep these under an hour. So, when I think, people tend to, I'm trying to think of, common situations where people have issues, and a lot of times people will attempt something and they won't get it right, or something will go wrong, and then they kind of like, well, I must have done something wrong, or I don't think I can do this, or the negative expectations start setting in. And I would just really encourage people to work on creating a positive intention and maintaining it. Treat it like a skill of its own. Okay? Outside of any other skill related to lucid dreaming, that one alone, if you're really having trouble making something work, if you're really having trouble with dream control, just working on that by itself can be effective. All right, so the next video is going to be about confidence. That's the fifth of the 5 ways, and then after that, I will be creating a video on, how do you create a practice with the 5 ways, and then also how do you diagnose problems and develop solutions. So at the end of the day, this is about having a structure that will help you figure out what's wrong and create some answers, find some answers. So, and then along with that, I'll be producing a number of shorts, YouTube shorts that will kind of explain each of the 5 ways in a short package. And people can watch the longer videos if they like. So, anyway, so expectation is a massive subject. So I kind of gave the basics and some ideas of how to work with it and some exercises. But definitely be waiting for that final guide that it will come out in Google Docs form. And thank you for listening. I'll see you next.